Massive projects in Africa that never came to fruition. Hello explorers, welcome to another informative video and thanks for watching. In this video, we shall be going down memory lane of regret, remembering massive projects in Africa that never ever came to fruition. Many projects are drawn up and set in motion to meet certain needs in the society or a country, but not all the projects proposed pull to the end. Some get abandoned halfway, while others, even upon completion, cannot be used either because they cannot be effectively used for the purpose for which they were thought. Others just get abandoned because of insufficient budget to complete these projects. However, when it fails and cannot be repaired because it could be damaged beyond repairs or the resources with which to effect repairs are not available, it is abandoned. Abandoned projects are not strange to nationals of developing countries. Indeed, our industrial landscape is littered with abandoned projects in various stages of despair. The common thread running through each of them is that they cannot be repaired and therefore abandoned for good. Much money is lost annually because of these failures. Investors in such projects are the countries who own the abandoned projects, the UN, World Bank, international agencies and communities. What is more, it leads to the economic retardation of nations. It is simply because 5 or 10 years national development plans are prepared by nations to help them climb up the economic development ladder. These plans are comprised of projections and milestones of when certain projects, which are the building blocks and components of the development plans, will be implemented. When implemented, they help to enhance and facilitate the economy and industrial infrastructure of the nations. The operation of the deliverable could constitute a base, steps or rungs of ladder, of which other new projects can be implemented. In the event of the failure of the first project, the implementation of the second and subsequent projects cannot happen. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily uploads. Here are massive projects in Africa that never came to fruition or were abandoned. Number 8. Microsoft's Digital Villages in South Africa. On 9th of March 1997, Bill Gates reportedly launched the Digital Villages concept in the Black Township of Soweto, which made headline news by its mass uprising in 1997. This township suffered and probably still suffers from extreme poverty. It was reported in the Spokesman Review, a daily newspaper in Spokane, Washington, USA, that when Gates visited in 1997, a computer could cost as much as a house and few people could think of going online. The launch center was South Africa's first free access digital village, funded by Microsoft, local computer companies, and US development organization Africare. The concept was that the $100,000 computer package housed in the Chiawelo Community Center should give the township's poor residents a link to the information age. As part of the opening, Gates observed a class from the local LC Ngidi Primary School using computers for the first time before reportedly telling a crowd of 200, Soweto is a milestone. There are major decisions ahead about whether technology will leave the developing world behind. This is to close the gap. But then this still became one of Africa's failed and abandoned projects, as it was reported that even by 2013, there was hardly any evidence of the digital villages across South Africa. They worked well for a while but collapsed as soon as the sponsors stopped funding the activities. Number 7. Chad-Cameroon Oil Pipeline cost $4.2 billion. The Chad-Cameroon Petroleum Development and Pipeline Project involved the construction of a 1,070-kilometer pipeline to transport crude oil from 3 fields in southwestern Chad to a floating facility 11 kilometers off the Cameroon coast. The pipeline has been completed and first oil was achieved in July 2003, several months ahead of schedule. The project was sponsored by the World Bank and costed a whopping $4.2 billion, but it got abandoned as soon as it was constructed. The pipeline was the biggest development project in Africa when it was completed in 2003. It was funded on condition that the money is spent with international supervision to develop Chad. However, President Idris Déby's government announced in 2005 that oil money would go toward the general budget and the purchase of weapons, or else oil companies would be expelled. Now, Déby spent the oil money on regime survival and rigged elections. Number 6. Failure of the Ghana-STX Building Project, a $10 billion housing project. Many Ghanaians were shocked when they heard in December 30, 2011 about the failure and abandonment of the $10 billion housing project between the government of Ghana and STX Engineering and Construction Limited of South Korea. The project was supposed to lead to the construction of 200,000 houses in Ghana in 5 years. The agreement was signed in 2009 and hailed by some as the best thing ever to happen to Ghana. A 12-member government delegation led by the then Minister of Water Resources and Works and Housing signed the STX housing project deal in 2009. From research findings, causes of failure of the project include the following: haphazard management of the project by the Ghanaian government, Effective governance apparently was missing as disunity and quarrels were reported between the Ghanaian and Korean partners of STX Engineering and Construction Ghana Limited, the local subsidiary of STX Korea. Corruption was probably a contributory factor as the consulting architectural concept design allegedly prepared by professor at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology on the orders of BK Asamoah cost the company about $21 million, when the Koreans claimed they could do it for only $5 million. Poor planning and absence of credible feasibility studies was also a huge problem. Number 5. Failure in the telecommunications industry in South Africa. Centec was the first company in South Africa to launch a wireless broadband service, introducing services in the 3.5 GHz band under the brand My Wireless in 2002. However, due to financial constraints, there has only been a limited rollout to parts of Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, Pretoria and Nelspruit. Failure of the Centec My Wireless and BizNet offerings. Over the years, there have been many failed telecommunications projects. Probably some of the most highly profiled failures were those by Centec in its My Wireless and BizNet offerings. In October 2010, Centec could not collect more than 60% of the money it was owed. Its former leadership went aground amidst accusations of its management, and the Auditor General was concerned they could not pay their bills to creditors. The My Wireless project was terminated in 2009 after the company proved it was unable to compete with better resourced private sector operators in the retail consumer market. Number 4. Office du Niger, Mali, more than $300 million over 50 years. The Office du Niger is a semi-autonomous government agency in Mali that administers a large irrigation scheme in Ségou region of the country. Water from the Niger River is diverted into a system of canals at the Makala Dam 35 kilometers downstream of Ségou. Sponsored by France, the goal in 1932 was to irrigate 2.47 million acres to grow cotton and rice and develop hydropower in the Mali desert. More than 30,000 people were forced to move to the desert to work on the largest aid project attempted by French colonial authorities. The African workers largely ignored French attempts to change traditional agricultural practices. By 1982, only 6% of the region was developed and the infrastructure was falling apart. The World Bank took over the project in 1985 and has shown limited success with rice farming either. Number 3. Rollback malaria across Africa cost about $500 million. Rollback Malaria was launched in 1998, bringing together multilateral, bilateral, non-governmental and private organizations. It made a clear pledge to curb the death rate of malaria by 2010 to half. African heads of state endorsed the pledge at a summit in Abuja, Nigeria in 2000. Rollback Malaria, established in 1998, aimed to halve malaria incidents by 2010. The program said Africa needed $1.9 billion a year to slow the disease, but by 2002, donors had only come up with $200 million a year. By 2004, the infection rate had risen to 12%. Experts say donors rarely followed through with pledges, and some programs were subject to political considerations, such as what kind of insecticides to use, whether to buy cheap generic drugs, or how much poor people should pay for mosquito nets. Number 2. Mother Fountain Mega City, $8 billion. In 2014, Chinese development group Zendai Development announced its intention to build an $8 billion city, around $84 billion rand at the time, in Mother Fountain in the east of Johannesburg. The development was pledged as a smart city which would rival Sandton with 9 functional zones, including a CBD, entertainment center and residential and educational districts. The project was earmarked to be built on the 1,600 hectares piece of land over 15 years to be completed in 2030. Housing approximately 30,000 families and creating up to 200,000 fixed jobs for the local community. However, after announcing the start of the construction in 2015, with some infrastructure development making headway the following year, news coming from the project fell silent by mid-2016, and by the end of the year, the project was dead. Research conducted by Ricardo Riboredo, a PhD candidate in geography at Trinity College Dublin, and Francis Brew, a research fellow at UCL, tracked the project over the last 6 years, trying to identify what exactly went wrong with the plan. According to the researchers, the project was hindered by conflicting visions between the developer and the city of Johannesburg. This was exacerbated by unexpectedly low demand for both housing and office space, which meant the original plan for the project was incompatible with the city's real estate market. Number 1. Failure of Egypt's Toshka New Valley Project, Egypt's $90 billion South Valley Project. The Toshka New Valley Project was planned to develop agricultural production and to create new jobs away from the Nile Valley by creating a second Nile Valley. The project was meant to help Egypt deal with its growing urban population and was described as the new era of hope for Egypt. It was intended to house more than 3 million residents and to increase Egypt's arable land area by 10%, given that about 83 million of Egyptians are densely packed into just 3% of the land which is arable. Therefore, Egypt's planners are undertaking many projects to redistribute the population by creating new areas that can sustain life by diverting the Nile to the Sahara Desert, in effect creating new oases. It started in the 1980s, but however, it appears that not everything was taken into full consideration during planning. For one, the Western Desert's high saline levels and the presence of undergoing aquifers in the area act as a major hindrance to any irrigation project. As the land is irrigated, the sod mixes with the aquifers and reduces access to the potable water. In 2005, the government announced that it was abandoning the second phase entirely and that the deadline for the project's completion was extended to 2022. There you have it, explorers. Those were massive projects in Africa that never came to fruition. Thanks for watching this video. If you want us to cover any of the top 10 topics, leave us suggestions in the comments and we will do well to grant your request. Also, if you did enjoy this video, do well to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.